Hi there. Have you heard of any legends? You know, a story that's, well, historic by nature, yeah, but may not actually have happened? Probable? If that's something you like listening to, then I have a very interesting topic that is lined up for you in this particular session. But before we begin, let me ask you something. Are you very helpful by nature? How many times have you gone out of your way to help somebody in need? Well, the poem that I am about to tell you is centered on a legend that is only about helping those in need, and if you don't, you might end up facing severe consequences. Now, without any further ado, let me tell you about the poem A Legend of the Northland. Now, a ballad, okay, pay careful attention. A ballad is typically a poem that narrates a story and can be sung because of its rhyming pattern. This pattern of composing poems was quite popular amongst many romantic poets. The Legend of the Northland is a ballad that tells us a story of a priest asking a woman for some food. But since she was greedy and selfish, she couldn't part with any of her food. More than that, I shall not tell you. But let's see how the events unfold. Let's begin reading. Good. Let's continue then. A Legend of the Northland by Phoebe Cary. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny, furry clothes. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe 'tis true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching just as he did, you know, he came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So she made a very little cake. But as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Now that I've finished reading the poem, let me give you a brief summary. So, this poem is a legend about an old woman who had angered Saint Peter with her selfish act. The story goes on like this. One day, Saint Peter reached the door of a cottage, all right, where a woman was making cakes and baking them on a hearth. Now, Saint Peter was extremely tired and hungry, so he requested the woman to give him a piece of cake. She went on to bake 2 cakes, but each of them she was unable to part with. Yeah, and it just appeared too big to her to be given away. Now that I have given you a brief idea of the poem, let us read 2 stanzas at one time, all right, and understand their meaning. Here are the first 2 stanzas. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny furry clothes. Now let's take a short break from reading that and try to understand these stanzas, okay? The poet begins by introducing the place from where the legend is derived, okay? It's in a place called the Northland, and the poet says that here in the Northland, the days are short and nights are long. So that is how we know that the Northland is somewhere near the poles where it is very cold. Yeah, we're assuming the North Pole, for instance. So it is so cold that people cannot sleep comfortably through the nights, and often they wake up unable to bear the freezing temperatures. Then in stanza 2, the poet gives us a description of the people of the Northland. She says that when the snow falls, the people here like to go sledging. For that, they tie up the reindeers to their sledges. Because of the cold, children have to wear heavy woolen clothes that cover them up fully. This makes them look like bears' cubs. My goodness. But let's go on and look at some new words now, all right, and find out their meanings. So, the first word we have in this part of the poem is harness. Harness means to tie securely. Then we have the word swift, which means quick. The next word is sledges, which is an object that is used for traveling over snow. And finally, we have the word furry, which means something that is covered with fur. Let's look at some interesting poetic devices in the stanza, or rather, figures of speech. Away, away in the Northland. So you see the word away is repeated twice. Okay, this is a very common one. It's repeated twice to give a poetic effect to the line. The use of this poetic device is called repetition. And repetition is a simple repeating of a word in a sentence or a poetical line. Now, I want you to note the rhyming words. You look at the last words of every line in the poem. The words few and through have a similar sound, and so do snows and clothes. Okay, keep that in mind. These words are called rhyming words, and just like this, I want you to continue keeping a track of these rhyming words at the end of each line, as they're going to help you understand a certain pattern which we will do at the end of the poem. Now, if you remember, a rhyme scheme or a rhyming pattern is a pattern of rhymes at the end of each line of a poem. It is usually referred to by using letters A, B, or C and so on to indicate which lines rhyme. Lines designated with the same letter all rhyme with each other. Look at the last words of each of the lines in each stanza and let's mark the words that sound similar. All right, so we start. In the first stanza, few and through. Second stanza, snows and clothes. Following we have true and you in the third stanza. Then in the fourth stanza, the rhyming words are below and no. Let's read the poem once again. Okay, put the letters where they're supposed to be. Away, away in the Northland, A, where the hours of the day are few, B, and the nights are so long in winter, C, that they cannot sleep them through, B, where they harness the swift reindeer, A, to the sledges when it snows, B, and the children look like bears' cubs, C, in their funny furry clothes, B. So the rhyme scheme of this entire poem is A, B, C, B. Tutormate. For more amazing video lectures, download the free app on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store.